다들 아주 대지가 나와야 아주 그리지도 주도서가 갑자기 배 괜히 가사 뭐래야 그들라기 레시소 근데 가서 얘기해서야 저기 답이지 지금 쉬어래 그래서 동화들아 아니 이게 상마 군주조다 이게 상마로 아니 정말로 쉬어야 냠도 아니 당주 소소쇼 아니 이제 그들라 랭게서야 집이나나 쉬어야 인터넷 냠도 아주 갑자기 배게 지금 소배게 소소게 아니 랭게서야 세시 그 칼로 나주 어디 쉬어니 랭게 옆에나 소소가 옆에나 아니 주들라 아니 덴돌라 그렇잖아. 그러니까 아니디 장라디 아니 어디 소소처럼 비죠. 소소라.
During Wednesday, Sunday New York, New Jersey, and 지금 현재 대신 나오다. 말하는 것 여기 탑재된 데 거기 탑재바 신나리 좀비고 신나리 댄스인들 대패래 아니 댄스인들 다본 얘기 먼저기 지당 먼저 숨지 드진다 제베더니 바스 제대 쇼니 말하는 게 담보 먼저기 베베기 무슨시 숨기 아니 대신 댄스인들 중에 담보 먼저기 그래 3일씩 제다 쇼쇼쇼이 somebody 얘기 드리기 뭐저기 근데 댄스들도 대패다 아니 계산하게 숨지들이 담지네나 먼저 드리기 레시 디 먼저 고딕도 되거든요 야 세션 그도 쉬나서 그래서 나 대상 고추도디 축제 되고 싶으시 디스디거든요 먼저 베르지든 소베 레드 제조를 되거든요 직세시 그도 쉬나서 댄스들도 지당한데 장애를 내패디 레시 셴바지 제도 된다 제벤 액션 레시 뉴스 패키지도 그다 답된 제 그래서 어디 소중 뭐네 엔스비들이나 담시나로시 스피리추제 답다 마게 자민 게지 뒤에 안되게 개미shum잡 담시나야스 좀 되래 데리제 답니 그림 드리 레시디 토마 나나즈데 산에서도 배우는 난 람산라레 지판젤라레 말랑나지 퍼센트 스티어 초소 심지도 델리스 페레 아니 코란 탭 임제다 미만을 델리시 마 담시나야스도 오바시도 디돌라 아니 지그르지든 소는 개인키나 하고도 델리지 스티어 초소 안 담보디 만주모니 델리스 카고 지사레디 만주 산에서도 델리지 하고 지우르레 자베찬에 가르치나 딱이 가라서 차단도시 벤진데 내는 하고 나도 몸이냐 때문에 산에 조단지 메시지 디스카우시 서비스 주의 디samde냐 주일로 보니 데디 캡트 보시 나로시 지금 소바나 나토나야 고도 소소 디samde냐 슈누다 SFT 뭐냐 디 코디 제이 인디냐 모치된 소바 점수 지나고도 어데지 제고 조스 세상에서 규례 본 것도 제이 또 고도치디 지당 원적이 별주된 소프에 내들파 숨지 주제디 먼저 첩시 내고 소파 예스 영으로 돈 지교래 되니 먼저 겨울 지구지 샤빈다 무슨 먼저야 소파 두번 지게 되면 남기도 다 주된 소프에 내든 상관 지금 소파랑 다 주시는 거나 곧 카스에 받는 야가 근데 실제 디스당 이 계산 먼저 길에 참는 됐다 띵간주랑 고직 쇼이 있으면 간주랑 레드도 말하는 저는 대기 caption 강이 그래서 먼저 말한 뱅키 루라 디스덴스에 딱 준비를 지도 이가서 고지 슈니 아디 양보다 다 SFT 슈 먼저 냠슈디 뭐지 말한 저랑 뱅키 스토 슈샤 그래서 어디든지 다시 카세우 주시나서 에 먼저 뭐니 당도 나는 데 슈고 되면 버전 되고 슈데 슈고 있어 디직 슈이 되니 딱 그나 등산기 두세대라 첩시 투제 되고 싶으시래 아니 미지가 간주 봐주다면서 딩저때 제가 저 게임하면서 상당히 요구도 당시에 난다 차들이 근데 일단 얘기 레귤레 상황이 등급지 가졌으나 댄스들은 프랑 대비 당도 지소 나도라 소소랑이 탑저 유림통이 굴레견이 팽이 강사지 차대래 그러고니 직수라 수사다 나는 지금 우틀라 수사지 저니니 요마 그 딘제지 등급도 맞아 고지 시와이 근데 드리나 안 댄스들은 저 진행이 유림통들이 이제 돌아 아주 센주 페미 직수라 수사시와 야 직변지 지와다 야 먼저 우지 넘어서 근데 저니는 만하지 넘어서 소대나로 치슈에 나는 디겐디 그리치든 소발이래 어디를 쉬에 제가 대진이 다세시도 나서서 다 지나면서 된다 아주 베베 지도나 당이 먹고 주요래 아주 찍 가지고 세우 주에서나 그날 강사 말들은 괜찮대래 이동 좁게 나지 여름지 가로 세우 싶어서 오면은 미속진지가 갈수 없어 딩 먼저 가로 땡닝을 짜자면 상을 지우고 뒤값도 뒤다 호소랑 전쟁에다 파이어지 먼저 오마이는 소유는 근데 저기 남교 요마데 셰 주면 특송사 딩 먼저 생각 샤우다 소소 탑재들 공백견 되면서 즉 파조들다 당신 저기 남교 믿어 디스등이 드리기다 즉 댄스들에는 그런다 즉 대베 소소 유름도는 탑재받이 차대래 근데 이 배찬이 이들이 등잔 뒤도서 주시하는 게 맞죠? 무슨 그래서 말한 소문이 지도는 단단하게 아이디올로지 통해서 저기 탑재 자이 나오는 게 믿었어. 이게 드리기다 지 개념이 넘버스 주는 데 이거 먼저 지도 나로 다른 체다트 되기도 하고 이게 소소소기 내고 빼니 빼라. 단 내고 파줘도 야고메 남들이 자이 마대로 시 이게 비교 쉬어야지. 아 근데 쉬어도 다 담시 쉬어지 좀 쉬어 뭐잖아요. 댄스들로 보다 산에서 배도 먼저 소배내다다 야 지도중에 술라기 싶어 니만 상마다 산에서도 쉬 뭐제 아 다들들다 직등진들로 보라는 거니까 대배 롬 몽고 소소기 굴레견제 이거 답해진 거니 대마지가 나 전정도 쉬는 내가 지금 그러는데요 porque espere 이 마시다 아주 나 소소 레그벤 들어가면 지금 유대시 조조야 말이야 대다 롬 몽고제다야 무슨 제대 좀 넣어주고 아니 몽바이나 소소기 탑재 규정 돈이 레드 사마 남노 여행 중에 레오다 멜럼 슈게요 어 딘데 슈게니 남바 상마 상지 슈게 도착
조선 올라 도체나 아니 다리 예 당국에 상마대 폐와라 인타반에 도시나 라이 이제 주주라도 이제 때문에 아주 지소나 뭘 빼면서 그거래 너무 망보시가 된다가 그런 답답 슈슈캅네 다다 슈슈 말에 라기면 근데 어 간사람 슈슈다 계셔 이네 뭐니 주주감네 그런 깔이 갭셔와 근데 로 망고 쇼지가 생각하다 탑주 난로네 백포라다 내가 가만히 이네 마살라 깔이 개베이네다 셰살라 깔이 개베이네다 그러봐 징산이 깔이 개베이네다 고직시에 이바이네다 샤시디에 이네다 그러봐 랭규 고직시에 이네다 토사 샵시바 셰보데리 냠들라 투제이 토네 슈두시에 이네다 간지 테네 고라기 모네 페 마시베 칼레게 미 샤딩 데데 나랑도 다리데 좀토가 페까 오쇼 아니 다리 가나 사진은 놀라 그게 약조 칭해데 실론에 망고지 페샤 아니 로 쉬어봐 가나 간삼지 페데샤 이기 예 주주라 모두 시에 줘 아니 이지는 놀라 쇼 와. 앞에와 망치기 그런 뭐 신기 교육 봐라. 그래서 이제 나오는 그 아니 도시는 도시니. So let me say a few things about Tenzi Judula. So actually Judula needs no introduction. Everybody knows who Tenzi Judula is. Judula
Judula is a poet, he is a writer, he is an activist, he is a revolutionary, he is a campaigner, an organizer, a strategist. Hopefully everybody's okay there. Just give me a second. Okay, Jim. At Judula, we are really honored to have the opportunity to have a book talk with Judula today, particularly for this book. The title is Nang, or Home. And as a poet, and as somebody who has known Judu for a really long time, I know that everything that Judu does is somehow infused with poetry. And in our community and in our movement, most people know Judu as an activist, but at a fundamental level, he is really a unique kind of poet. And we know when Judu wrote one of his most well-known essays, My Kind of Exile. That was a long time ago, and I remember that when that essay came out, it was a huge inspiration to so many people, so many young Tibetans in our community at that time. My Kind of Exile is the Lord My Kind of Exile. I see a few hands. This came out about 15 years ago. What? 15 or 20 years ago. 2001. I would highly encourage, it's available online, I would highly encourage anybody who has access to the internet. Who has access to the internet? Everybody does, right? So please, at some point, I would encourage that you should go and read that essay, because I think it was one of the defining moments in our exile history, when somebody from our own community, writing in a global foreign language, truly captured the essence of the exile experience. What does it mean to grow up in exile? What does it mean to be homeless? What does it mean to be stateless? What does it mean to be estranged from one's own homeland? What does it mean to be distant from one's own home and parents, and not have the experience of an ordinary, normal kind of childhood? And that essay won the prestigious Picador Award in India. So I would highly encourage people to go read that essay. It really opened up a new kind of frontier and a new kind of vision and possibility for many young Tibetans to realize, oh, there is a way to write something like this. There is a way to express ourselves through poetry or prose. And we all of us who grew up in exile, we struggle between so many different languages. And we often lament the fact that we can speak, by definition of being in exile, we can speak several different languages because that was imposed on us. We never had a choice to be masterfully fluent in just one language. Because we grew up in exile, we had to deal in several different languages. But we could not, many of us could not, express ourselves deeply and satisfactorily and meaningfully in one single language. And that was a condition of exile that all of us were aware of without really speaking much about it. And when that essay came out, it showed us how in our own new kind of exile language that combines a few different languages, vocabularies from many different languages, many different traditions, could actually meaningfully give expression to our deepest pains and conditions. And the second time I remember actually, in terms of even in activism, to really set a new standard for the exiled Tibetan generation and also for inside Tibet. And many of us remember the time when he climbed up to the 14th floor of the Oberoi Hotel in Bombay. We also remember other times when he scaled other kinds of towers. And there was one moment, it was, in many ways, that was also a poetic kind of activism. It was a poetic kind of advocacy, a new kind of political activism for Tibet. There was nothing that wasn't artistic and poetic about that action. It captured the global media, and it completely ruined and shamed the Chinese leaders' visit to India at that time. It dominated the media coverage. And I remember asking Junji, there was so much security back then in that city. There was so much security. Police were everywhere. Everything was being surveilled. All the Tibetans were kept under lockdown because the Chinese leader was coming, right? So there really was no opportunity or possibility for that kind of action. And everybody was completely surprised when Sunju emerged at the top of the tower, throwing out all these leaflets and flyers from the top of the tower for all the media and people down on the streets. And he did it once again. So I asked him, how did you do that? That would have been impossible. How did you do it? How did you get to the top of the tower amid all the security and surveillance and everything? And he said he climbed that tower 3 days before the event. And the Indian police usually comes to a site 1 day before the event. So Tsunju had been hiding in that tower for 3 days. And it was a reminder, the foresight, the vision, the originality of thinking. And I think that unique action, which is just one out of many different actions and many different protests, many different iconic kind of political theater that he has taken part in, really shows that he's always thinking, he's always contemplating, he's always envisioning new possibilities, new ways of doing things, new frontiers, exploring uncharted waters in no matter what area, no matter what field. And I think whether it's in writing, whether it's in poetry, whether it's in theater, whether it's in activism or advocacy and campaigning, Sunju really has shown us so much of what is possible. And that's why it's my great honor to introduce to all of us NJ Sunjula. Please welcome Sunju. New York, New Jersey,
그린 것도 이 배드 문제기 내림이 대포로 많이 인지나 저선 내림 망치 인지나는 교수세 우리 저선 담고 도만이네 그 고진낭이 괜찮아 왜 근데 지금 그린 게 내림이 담고 도만 배드 문제 제하랑 제고 충분히 개 담고된 시야지 근데 지 아니 이 슈라 한 좀당 탑주 발진 제와스 시제가래 담시 통통지 지나 삼성 제가 드린 배대 공제기 내림이 들리지니 아니 이슈를 수지 받은 시 이슈를 아니 말해다 지당 탑주 단 제가 유배 담시 들리지니 제가 드린 게 들리지니 thank you very much Tibetan community, New York, New Jersey, organizing this book launch event. It's a great honor for me that this community here has organized this, and it gives me a great sense of honor that I am here in New York and I am able to come and present my 5th collection of writings here. So what we will do initially is to do a small launch ceremony which includes some of my good friends to come over here and we launch the book, show the book cover to the audience, and after that I will speak about writing and resistance. So for the book launch event ceremony, I have a couple of friends to ask come up here and be with me as we launch the book. Firstly, I will request my former schoolmate and classmate Tenzin Jigmela to come up. I studied with Tenzin Jigmela. He's a teacher here in New York. We studied together from class 4. From 4th standard we've been together, and later of course he went to science. I never understood any mathematics or anything like that, so I went to literature. But we've been classmates from that time. 1984 is what I'm talking about. So Tenzin Jigmela, please come. Tenzin Jigmela represents the publisher today. This book has been sponsored by TCV 1993 batch, and because we were together in school, in class, I request him to come to represent. Please come here, to hold the book. Please come up here. Another person I will ask here, come here, is Natasha Israni. We studied together when I was doing my MA in English literature way back in Bombay. We were classmates. So please come, Natasha Israni. Another person I will ask, of course, Tendor is here already. We've been friends in the movement for the longest period of time as an activist and also as an intellectual in the Tibetan community. He's finishing his PhD. So Tendor is one person I will request him to come over here is Jamyam Norgula, whose initial writing that I read in school inspired me to write. Jamyam Norgula is someone who broke the path in writing in English by Tibetan. You know, as a Tibetan, when you write Tibetan experience in English, extremely difficult. And his writing, along with Professor Dawadu, who came to do a number of them, who inspired me. Another person I will request to come over here is Sunam Bondula, one who came here in 1970s and started USTC. Sunam Bondula, please come. Please come. Sunam Bondula, please come. Nogula is already here to represent the Tibetan community in New York and New Jersey. So we will all stand here with a copy in our hand. Please come. Please come here. We all stand. Our friend, please, Professor Matt Mayer. Please. Professor Matt Mayer is a teacher in non-violence and resistance. He's been teacher to so many movements around the world, and I feel honored that you are here and you came to participate. Please hold it. Okay, Loso, Kuchana, Loso, thank you. So this book, this is my 5th collection of writings. In fact, as an activist, I seem to have given in more to the immediacy of activism that I've been able to write very little. You see, this thin book of poems, this is a result of 10 years. It's only 56 pages. You see, this is how little I've been able to write, because I've been more the activist, going to jail, fight court cases, answer questions, do the interview, train youngsters, meet with politicians, travel, speak in different colleges and universities. So I can actually see that I've been more the activist than the writer. And therefore, this year I said to myself that I must focus more on writing, and which I plan to do this year. In my batch of Tibetan intellectuals who wrote in English, you know, for me and my generation, English is a foreign language. It's not a language we grew up with. It's not a language we were born in. You know, this is the language, and therefore we constantly say, I write in English. But this is the language we always wanted to write in. And therefore today I find myself placed separately, half in English and half in Tibetan. You know, our teachers used to say that we need to talk to the international community, our story. People do not know. when I was in 4th standard, 5th standard, when I was in school, we were told that the international community does not know. We have to work to tell them our story. Then they will come about and support us. So from school onwards, I had always wanted to write and speak and argue in this language. If you remember, many of you who went through Tibetan schools, we learned some English song which went something like this. Ingle a she jangxing pomo, ingle a she jangxing pomo, tibi tibi tup tup ayush. You are the morning. You see, only the last sentence is English. The rest is just gibberish. We were thinking we were singing in English. You see, language has become an aspiration for us because we thought this is the medium with which we can connect to the rest of the world. I had many interests. I used to take interest in science, and my former classmate, Tenzin Jigme, and also my friend, Siring Topgil Hading, he's also sitting over there. You know, we used to take so much of interest in science. We were in 8th standard, 9th standard, we were talking about quarks and quantum mechanics in 8th and 9th standard. I was very aware that my mathematics was too bad. I couldn't go in that line. So from childhood, I'd always wanted to be a writer, to tell the story of Tibet, and purely focused on this. So today I find that when it comes to writing and reading, English is my language. But when it comes to common day-to-day communication, of course, it's Tibetan, mother tongue. So you see, I'm placed in 2 different languages. And in India, Hindi is the language of survival, to survive. And I've become quite okay with Hindi. The only problem is we do not know whether it's karti hai or karta hai. That's still pulling. It's neither in English or in Tibetan. So Tibetans, however good we are in Hindi, we are never able to deal with the gendered verbs. And then I acquired a 4th language, a language of luxury, just to show off, Tamil. My former friend from Tamil Nadu, Babila, I was speaking to her in Tamil. And usually in India, I show off my Tamil. When many of the Indians say, look at our face and, hey, Ching Chong, Jackie Chan friend, as a, you know, log aise bolte hain. So I talk to them, taunt to them and say, enada enna venum? அப்படியா உங்களுக்கு தமிழ் தெரியல நான் ஹிந்தி பாஷையில் பேசுகிறேங்க आप कुछ कह रहे थे? So you see, when you are in exile, it becomes a fertile ground for growth. You are ready to mix, adapt, learn, assimilate. It becomes a fertile ground for growth as a human being. Most exiles actually speak 3 to 4, even 5 different languages. It's a survival tactic. And this is from where my writing comes from. Today, when I launched this new book, calling it Nang, and the English title is Nowhere to Call Home. This is the title of one of my essays here, and is the sequel to the earlier essay about which Tendur spoke about, My Kind of Exile. Now you see, it took almost about 20 years for me to write the sequel. My Kind of Exile was written in 2001, and I wrote this essay, Nowhere to Call Home, last year. So after almost about 20 years, I'm writing this essay. And this is the one I want to talk about today. If you see the back jacket, it says here, the idea of the book. Nang is home in Tibetan. It also means inside, inward, within, and the philosophical in. Home is not a house, but the purpose that takes us places, and sometimes away from our own home. Reasons to live can make strangers a family, and no country foreign. When we come out of our comfort zone, we learn to make ourselves feel at home anywhere. Stuck at home with old habits and malice, a house can sometimes turn into a prison. Once, a prince from the land of the Ganges left his family and kingdom in search of higher truths and never returned. He found a key to happiness, which even to this day is practiced as the path to freedom. To many, this is home. So you see, as an exile, now our problem over here with the exiles is that there is home, and majority of the Tibetans even today live in Tibet under the Chinese occupation. But where there is home, there's no freedom. And we all actually profess that we live in free country, especially the citizens of the United States. You say we are living in a free country. You have freedom. But where is your home? Even if you have a house, I can assume that at least we are unable to give this title home to the place where we all live. So where there is freedom, there is no home. And where there is home, where people at home, there is no freedom. And therefore that title, nowhere to call home. It's a constant struggle. The Tibetan word nang is much more richer than the English word home. In fact, there is a great sense of attachment with the English word home. You don't want to call just any place home. But in Tibetan language, there is great sense of detachment. Wherever we stay, we say home, nang. A hostel room is also nang. A hotel room is also nang. Someone else's house where you are temporarily staying is nang. At the moment, I'm staying with my friend Lamsang, and I call that nang. Nang lo tan nang do. So, with great casualness, we say tan nang lo do. But when it comes to English, we are not able to give that sacred title, the titlement of home. You see, we are divided into different languages, home and nang. So these are great contradictions. So you see the importance of the language, your mother tongue. There are a few other things I wanted to share with you, particularly from the new essay. After schooling, we are now on page number 9 in case you want to follow that. After schooling, my first foray outside the Tibetan community was Madras, the capital of the Tamilian world in South India. I was shocked not only by the people, place, and language, but also by the palate. My tummy, raised on Tibetan gastronomy, was being tested by fiery masala foods. My childhood snack, idlis, resurfaced, but this time as the staple main course. In the first week, the tangy masala meals were fun, However, by the third week, my Tibetan digestive system started to give up. The light rice meals not only soon made us hungry again, the masala burned our guts. Often in the middle of the night, I sat up on my bed, pressing a wet pillow to my belly while studying, trying to study. My guts burned and I regurgitated a sour juice up my gullet. Combined with the anxiety of tackling Shakespeare, Tagore, and Subramaniam Bharati, I stayed laid on my bed in the half-lit room and cried deep into the night. Now, South Indian cuisine is one of my favorites, and even after 25 years, I can still show off a smattering of Tamil, where adaptation meets a dead end. Creativity takes the lead forward. Perhaps exile is the most fertile ground for growth. Here is a unique exile experience, particularly from Dharamshala. This was the time when we used to make telephone calls, not on mobile phones, but STD and ISD booths. Now, those from India would actually remember the role of those phone booths. Until the mobile revolution, we are now page number 7. Until the mobile revolution, when wires connected the world, we encased ourselves in STD and ISD booths to make phone calls. International trunk calls were expensive, but a certain call package made phone calls to Tibet affordable. Since half of Dharamshala Tibetans came from Tibet, in recent years, they all called Tibet regularly. This was the only direct link between exile and home. Once, on the Tibetan New Year, Losar, I watched a long line of young men and women outside a phone booth in McLeodganj. One by one, the refugees enter the cubicle, speak to their loved ones in Tibet, cry and come out, emotionally wrecked, then pay and leave. I called the booth the cry box. I realized that maximum number of Tibetans in Dharamshala cry during Losar. You see, this is the role of the writer. The writer is quietly watching, observing. And because of that, the writer is able to see more than most other people. Did you actually realize that Dharamshala cries the most on the Tibetan New Year? You know, it's supposed to be the happy day. And in so many phone booths, every day, on the New Year, Dharamshala cries the most on a Losar day. And I realized that. And the story doesn't end there. That evening, as I walked down the hillside, taking the shortcut through the pine woods and oaks, I reflected that they were fortunate to have someone to cry to, a house to call home. Being exile-born myself and having been deposited in a boarding school as a semi-orphan from early childhood, I find it painful even to write here that I grew up distant from my family. That night I wrote, Losar is when we, the juveniles and bastards, call home across the Himalayas and cry into the wire. Through the profound loneliness of being far away from parents and our imagined homeland, I often thought that we were children of our circumstances, and that history was our father, and the culture that nourished us was our mother. The thande di ki keje di nenga Teleya Kartungutsnaga. Tangazu Chundune Zenju Jizo Nanglogic Debe Gabla Pamata Taranguche. Gashi Pune Yongbari Pamat Betarangur, Pama Meba Mare Yore. Nganzu Yagalaki Salongche, Pamal Taranguche, Lapran De Yondu Tanganzu Nedanjig Bugu Chavarmando, Pameg Bugu Memberdo. And Nganzu Sojon Chiadi, Nganzu Chu Dan Rikshungi Sojon Chigorwa. Nganzu Yabuche, Mi Yabuchaya, Mi Sambuchaya, Mizitunda Gemba Demba Yonalia, Nganzu Chu the Rishun Kachimur and Abroa. Dim songs at the Netandi Something Cartigorsana, Nganzu Lugu Pugris. Nedangi Pugris, Nganzu Lugu, Nganzuki, Abatang. Rikshungi, Nganzu Sojon Chigo Sonza, Nganzu Chuda Rikshungi, Nganzuga Amarela. Tachi gets a shedan David, gets a chimpore. Pama Torgio Davoyore. No more Netan Day, you want to indicate Toneta, Salon Chumbre. Just Zombo Jiggy, Langanlia, Chizo Nanrola, Miss Shembadunzu, Hadong but Zombo Tonan Cheni, Jig Tiyung do any, me Mangbuji, Samai the Ingmar, me Mangbuji, what the temper insert D, Male in the Jig Thorsung Samatojik, the Digic, Rimshing, Yungudwa, the Digic, some Zombo Langandoji, in the Digic, Ranshin, Young Degdo. So this is a unique experience that I am writing about. And this is something I used to feel many years ago when I read Jamya Nurbula, Dawa Nurbu, Ke Thundub. And Tibetan Review was a magazine that I used to read every month without missing even a single page. And this was the enthusiasm with which we wanted to grow up fast. And later, I myself started to write, and this is what I was feeling. Another small para I wanted to share here, and then, of course, then we'll go into discussion in case there is any questions and comments to discuss. This bit. We are now page number 10. 2 years ago, I went on a speaking tour of the UK. Tibetans living in the towns and cities that I visited hosted us. After much speaking, traveling, and interviews, when we gathered for dinner with long-lost friends, the food was inevitably rice, dal, and curry, typically Indian. I realized Tibetans have gone to the West, but culturally they have never left India. Today, almost 70,000 Tibetans have immigrated to the West, and they have not only become citizens of the world, but preserved their identity. However, the third generation youths are a concern. Like most immigrant children, they have inherited the blood and the stories, but mostly not the language.
searching for a deeper meaning of what home is, you embody internationally freedom and home for all people. So I want to celebrate you, I want to celebrate the book, I want to thank you, and then I want to ask you to reflect on that comment I just made about home, internationalism, and your own voice. Thank you.
Professor McNair is someone I look up to, and he's been almost like my teacher. And he recently organized, last year organized, an international gathering in South Sudan. And I was perhaps the first Tibetan to go there with a proper visa and participate in the gathering where there were people from almost 30 or 40 countries. Professor, the idea of home, for me, especially coming from a very rich Tibetan tradition of warriorship, and the Tibetan tradition that is inspired from the idea of love and compassion from Buddhism. You know, we actually belong to two very rich traditions. That of the warriors and the Buddhists. And this helps us, places us in a very unique position to understand the idea of home. And what I have learned, of course, all of us do not learn the same thing. Although we all belong to the same culture and identity, we have had the same leadership historians, the same culture, almost the same exile growing. Professor, I felt that human beings have a very unique power to empower ourselves. And as someone who's traveled around the world, I've been to 23 different countries. I've traveled all across India. I've traveled almost about 8 months in a year. So as a traveler, I felt that home is not something you can carry. Home is not something which is waiting for you. Home is the capacity with which you make yourself feel at home anywhere. It's a capacity. It is the empowerment where nothing is too low standard, too dirty, too scattered, too chaotic. Wherever you go, you develop a capacity to feel at home wherever you go. Wherever you go. And also, as an activist, I've been jailed so many times. I've been beaten, tortured, stripped naked in front of police officers. I've been beaten. I've been, psychologically tortured. That too in Lhasa for 3 months, many years ago. So having undergone all of that, I've learned that there is a capacity you can develop in yourself where facilities do not make home. Your capacity to feel at home makes you feel at home wherever you go. So you see, home is something you can actually carry with you. So poetically, home is not a box or a house you can carry on your home, in your head, but this is the capacity, the empowerment that you carry. And it is possible for anyone to develop this capacity. There, you are international. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much, Tenzin. Such a pleasure to listen to you. Now, you also talk about home as purpose, and that's been very integral since I saw you from college days to what you've done to what you're doing now. But I'm curious in terms of your purpose, which you have maintained despite everything you mentioned, meetings in Lhasa, your traveling, your commitment to certain ideals and to Tibet. I'm curious how, in the face of even adversity or challenge or day to day, how you keep your individual purpose. I'm curious about your own, a little bit a peek into your own individual habits, whether it's meditation or whatever it may be, as you travel. One is that, and also how you see your purpose going ahead. How has it changed? And do you think it's changing? And if it is changing, even if it is subtle, I'm curious, after all these years of doing this work, what does that look like for you? Thank you.
Thank you. So Natasha was not just my classmate, but she was the first journalist who wrote about me as a writer. When I first came out with my first book, Crossing the Border, she was the one who wrote an article and published in Times of India in Bombay. And as fellow classmates, I see that you have taken from the essay and so also from my reading one of the most important ideas here, the purpose. You see, it is the purpose that takes you out of your own home, out of your country, out of your parents' house, away from your family. Purpose. In fact, America is a country of immigrants. It is the purpose that has taken these immigrants from their own homes. So we are all driven by a purpose. I am driven by purpose here. But personally, for me, the purpose is not money. The purpose is not facilities. It's not a house. It's not a car, bank balance, money, name. These are achievable purposes. And the trouble with achievable purposes is that once you achieve that, it's at the end of the life. You have come to, if the tragedy had happened, if that small purpose, like to become rich with money, yeah. For me, the purpose that I have chosen in my life is to regain the independence of Tibet. And for a human being, and that too as a Tibetan refugee, is a big enough purpose. You know, we are challenging one of the most brutal dictatorships in the world. So this is a big enough purpose. And in this purpose, I'm spending whatever little I know, whatever little energy I have, but completely engrossed in this. But through non-violence. Because non-violence is also a purpose. Because non-violence is our culture. Non-violence is our identity. But this non-violence is not the ones who would, keep quiet, be silent, but the active one, aggressive one, confrontational one that is working every single day. That non-violence. Professor Ashish Nandi in India calls me militant non-violence. And I think there is a reason in it. And this is the country of Martin Luther King. And Dr. King fashioned non-violence in this country. You see, there's a great sense of non-violence here in this very city, New York. So, the purpose for me at the moment is not only the freedom of Tibet, but true non-violence. And these are two biggest purposes that can make a person be at calm and peace now when the freedom struggle is boisterously continuing. And even in future, it guarantees that peace and calm. And therefore, non-violence guarantees that you are free now and free in future. Free not from enemy, free from your own anger, hatred, and greed. So see, for me, the freedom struggle is more than just the independence of Tibet. You see, this is a much bigger purpose. So, of course, there is the overall freedom struggle of Tibet. Then there is also the freedom you want to achieve from your own self. So, both as a writer, as a keen observer of how things are going on, and also as the activist who is constantly seeing the change
that is happening within myself. I've seen myself change from how angry I was at one point of time and how perhaps a little more strategic I am today. I've seen myself how much I have changed in all these years. I've been in activism for, actively involved in this for almost about 26, 27 years. And it's a constant process, freedom struggle is a constant process. It's not something you do over some time and then you perfect it. No one perfects it. It's a constant process. So this process is how one could actually see the purpose. And the relationship you share with that purpose. Any other questions? Perhaps the last one. Yeah. Okay.
사실 내가 tension으로 내게 저한테 지단 기타 제가 넘버 2나 장전 타죠 받지 좀봐 받지 데리지 차디요래 다른 게 저한테라 가르치고서나 지단 가지고 배비 지소 나와야 다 요즘 마와이나다 탭팅이나다 이 저럽 양식 서트칭이나다 망부지나 초래 이게 단다 두대 되나야 안주기 배우기 루줄에 초심만이 루주 캔다들 등이죠. 원담을 등이지. 지당 가도 땡겨 나와도로. 괜찮아 좀 바쁘지 입에 차니 대 등이지 입에 차니. 내도 가라 시동 가르치 쓰기로. 와 시동 좀 바쁘 되더라. 내도 통에 되게 마음 발아야 안주 배우기 루줄에야 니진 같이 탑침을 루그랬다고 말해. 어디 가는 게지 얘기를 할 수 있어.
지난하게 라두잖아. 완전 단데 또 소포스 라베갑라. 소포스 라베갑라야 개체고지 간두스나 수수기 통랑 나는 최지 마데네. 지도 나오로 빌레팅 사바지. 지도 디기 로규 카레도. 지도 디 칼라 사단이 누가 카레 신샤. 도로 관담은 누가 카레 신샤. 지중기 돈은 로규 카레도. 단대내법이 아니 조단 거지 간주도 마음과 가와 전립사지 저거 보시면 슈팅 사고 통이 지금 딸을 깝라 소수도 주남기 뒤가 많이 봐 주남기 뒤가 많이 봐 마체 지소 나무로 뭘 내다 띵 사고치니 가들 지금 만다고 여가 있네 이 나무 타고 니네 띵 사바지 지지 니기 원중 용소 당부 따체 아니 이 나무네 아니 너같은 사고치제 아니 제주당 좀 뒤통에 니또 좀 보기 믹스도 누가 디들 제가 딘데시 용도 나래 임바이나 양해 좀 지단 데스 만다리네 로기티 나 여러분 뒤지면 얘기 니기 농소기 내랑 근데 ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 담살을 나로리아 아니 로사가로 보고 막쇼 무고요라면 거꾸로 미기 용속의 영동지 그래도 어디 내말에 딘디지 좀 내말 딘디 통부도 지다에 마마랑 좀 지단디 딘디지 그래 미기 유규 영용기 통에 아니 지금 sem소 통에 좀 딘디지 통에 딘디지 그래서 다 루규 진행 가시야 샵시기 미기 내제지 캐제 아니 소수기 군지 두개 체도 아니 좀 딘디 진행 딘디 농데 와 양 딘디지 통에 소소라 민 딘디지 주나삼 다 된저 팀다 소소 예비 미규디 집어지 세우 통구도 와 지상 딘디고요래 제장 좀고 순대집에 있는 소소 냠룡 케레지 요래 잔을라 좀 딘디 망골론 아니 오마 담고 집에 루그난 지게 슈리아 견아 보라랑이 대파리 잡시면 딘디 지게 찍기 인지 나올 집에 가야 냐고 임방 맞지 그때 대파리시 삼두에게 드레지 산데스 나오는 연구도 봐 그래서 대두 때문에 그 좀 먹고 이게 지금 연내도 맞으면 근데 용기 이네들 첩식 미규 지켜요나 거기신 제대요래 딱 딜이야 말에 라베페 카코레 kana susu zobo ko susu yingi jipa yin shima no yin la la khapolo wa chesanta di 좀 그런 장이 kum 얘기를 와 아니 타마 탑제대 가래 미망기 가주스 원한 집도 가주스 요구도 가주스 랭크도 이 미망 탑주 그래서
my question is, in your past book, the title was Kora, but now this is Nang. So for me, Kora is very particular to Tibetan culture. It speaks about Tibet. Whereas Nang is, for me personally, it's more of a universal, talking to a larger group of displaced people. So is this a new transition for you as you become more mature as a writer, as an activist?
No, so so you see, Kirtikep is going to be one of the most important intellectuals in the Tibetan community. Watch this man. You see, the idea of Kora at one point of time, which actually meant circumambulation, it was very basically placed in a Buddhist idea of the Tibetan culture. Here now, there is an international resonance in it, but at the same time, when you actually say Nang, it's very Tibetan too. You see, there is the word Nang is much richer than English or most other titles I could actually think about. And this has come quite naturally to me, the idea of Nang. And to actually see this cover, the basic idea is, the graphic idea is my own. I wrote that on a digital slate, and I asked my friend Pujung Sonam to do this on computer. So the idea of Nang boldly written in Tibetan, and that too marking down on O of the word home, has a very disturbing image to it. So I think, Nang is very dear, at the same time disturbing. Ask any Tibetan. Home, Nang lana ke me yodoche. Home lana tayan chik toksung jawe dojo. You see, they actually do not mean the same, but there is common resonance in both the languages. So if you ask the Tibetan, where is your home? Immediately the Tibetans will like, I'm Tibetan, Tibet is my home, that kind of thing. But if you ask a Tibetan in Tibetan, immediately say wherever the house is, Jacksonite or Woodside, Sundays or whatever, Nang. Nang Shivaji Shijana Yore, Nang Shivaji Bramsara Yore, Nang one near the Granada Yore. So there are so many homes we are listed. Chizam, Nang the home for a huge so I love this idea that there is so much richness, between the idea of home and Nang. And this is what I want to explore here in this essay. Okay, that is the last question. Then of course we can go into the discussion.
Actually, my name is my name is Namgyal. This question is my personal capacity. It's a kind of disclaimer. I'm quite concerned and I'm kind of very confused, like anyone else. It's Nang and no way to call home. It's kind of very confusing. At the same time, where do you think about? For me, the home is kind of like my homeland, it's my country. So if you see for the Nang, I feel when I read the Nang, it seems like it tend to dilute or devalue the real purpose or very real sense of the home. Maybe it's kind of very conventional, kind of very conservative, but of course, like home, there is a rules, there is like kind of bounding, there's kind of inherent by birth, this kind of home. And Nang is this kind of transcend wherever we go, but at the same time, for me, it's like kind of home is kind of more. I will go by home side, not like Nang side. I'm kind of with home side, not Nang side. So it's personally, what do you think? It's kind of very philosophical thing. So which side you want to go, Nang or home? It's my concern. Thanks so much.
I think we're going to vote. Shall we vote? So Tenamla, thank you. Tenamla is actually the president of Regional Tibetan Youth Congress, New York in person. Thank you for your question. I think this divide will always be there, and this will debate in our head every day. Are you the home person or are you the Nang person? For me, it's not the home or a Nang. For me, struggle is one. struggle, I find home. And I have to tell you, the day when Tibet becomes free and independent, the day its struggle comes to an end, it will be my tragedy. Then there will be no struggle for me. Yeah, thanks.
So I have one really quick question. So I have one really quick question. It's more not really about your writing, but more about your perseverance. So I know it took a long time to write this book because of a lot of other things that are happening in your life. If did you have any feelings of like stress and like not wanting to continue? And if you did, how did you persevere through that? That's what I was wondering because I have a lot of feelings of stress when I'm working on like projects and if I'm working on like homework and stuff. And sometimes I really want to give up and I don't even know how I'm gonna persevere through that. So I was wondering how you do it.
Thank you. Such a big question from such a small, young age. I think it has to go to the previous question about purpose at home. I'm someone who had never, you will not believe me, the kind of experiences I have had having to go to jail 16 times. 16 बार jail में गया हूँ और मार खाया हूँ. And having gone through jail so many times, and going to jail is nothing actually. You know, you go to jail for 10 days or 15 days, you come out, and you actually come out more like a martyr. Now, jail ke hain, you know, kind of romantic view of looking at yourself. The worst thing is, going to court, Indian courts, where the court cases go on and months and years. You know, for one case in Bangalore, I went to Bangalore from Dharamshala via Delhi 37 times. And you know what happened towards the end? I was asked to pay a fine of 5,000 rupees. I felt like saying, "Pehle bata de to 5,000 rupees." You should have told me in the beginning the fine is just 5,000. I would have paid it. I would have saved 37 trips to Bangalore. That too when I had no money at all. I had to beg, I had to borrow money from friends to take either the train or flight or, and that too had to come back to Dharamshala. Those things can be frustrating. But in my case, I'm someone who enjoys, and therefore I said, with the reason, struggle is my thing. I live there. When Indian police arrest me, and they try to threaten us, they always play the good cop and the bad cop. So they're like, hey, you take some bata. There is a baki corner. And someone tell me. And the other cop would say, oh, please tell us, what are the people? You are such an educated person. You are very liberal, such a great person you are. You are our Bhagat Singh, they would say. Then I tell them, save this for a better time. I've been to jail so many times. And my first jail experience was in Tibet, under the Chinese. So I tell them, we can actually do away with all this tactic, good cop and bad cop. We are all on one side. The real enemy is China, not two of us. You see, I enjoy being in this room. I'm someone who will never face this question, giving up. Forget about giving up. I will talk to giving up. When are you giving up? I will interrogate that because I'm someone who enjoys, and therefore I said with the reason that when the struggle comes to an end, that will be a tragedy for me. Because I'm someone who enjoys this tension, this uncertainty, this interrogation, this pressure from 양춘나 전주수의 주제기 남뒤난 수바 상대기는 중국에서 가져서 예배 내라 주백갑나 강에지 후투 세버티어다 파셔 쪼낭 끼닝기 니들 준다. And the way Buddhist teachings, especially by Shantideva and the Bodhisattva topic, right? There are 7 great virtues, and one of the virtues, a name, His Holiness the Dalai Lama blessed me, is the name, which actually means someone who undergoes struggle, someone who takes great pain and finds the deepest joy from the biggest trouble and the challenge. And he's willing to do this 100 times and still be able to find joy in it. I'm someone who interrogates pain and suffering, who enjoys this. And therefore I have a reason to say that when the struggle of Tibet comes to an end, it will be my tragedy.
Thank you so much. We still have lots of questions left, but first we'll have a short break, 10 minutes for tea break and bathroom break, right? But after the break, we'll have the second session where Junjula will speak